So you need to go to their doctor. Let's say someone has been injured, they've reported it, they're now seeking treatment, and their injury is so severe that they are out of work for a certain amount of time. At that point, are they entitled to any compensation?
Well, they are, but there's three benefits that they're entitled to in workers' comp, and we're going to kind of hit on each of those. But usually, initially, what will happen is if they're not written out of work, the doctor will put them on light duty. They'll say, yeah, you've got a back strain or you've got this injury, or, but let's put you on light duty. So the injured person would take that to their employer. Their employer would make a decision whether or not they're going to allow you to come back and do light duty. And I'll give you a classic example. Somebody's working at Walmart. They get hurt. They're a stalker after hours. Walmart finds out that you're on light duty. Your light duty may become being the greeter at the front door, where you stand there, they give you a chair. You can alternate sitting and standing, and you're greeting people. You're checking the slips. So they either provide you light duty, and then if your condition continues to get worse and the doctor writes you out of work, then you'd be entitled to what is called temporary total disability benefits, which just because you're out of work a couple of days doesn't mean they owe you anything. Temporary total disability benefits begin when you've been out of work 8 days. So if you're in 7 consecutive days. So on the 8th day, they owe you for 1 day of disability benefits. And then on the 15th day, they have to go back and pick up the whole 2 weeks. So when they pick up the whole 2 weeks, they go back and the temporary total disability benefits isn't your paycheck. It's 2/3 your average weekly wage. So, the thing, a lot of times people say, well, I work 40 hours 1 week, and some weeks I only work 10 hours. So the way they calculate that is based on 52 weeks prior to the date of your injury. They have to fill out a form, which totals up how much they paid in the 52 weeks prior to the injury. They average that up, and your weekly benefit for workers' comp when you're out of work, written by the authorized treating physician. Again, that's why the authorized treating physician. So if your doctor writes you out of work, you go to a family doctor and they write you out of work and it's not an authorized treating physician, you're pretty much out of luck at that point. But if the authorized treating physician has you out of work, you've been out of work, let's say 2 weeks, you're entitled to 2/3 your average weekly wage based on the 52 weeks prior to the injury.
And if someone is written out of work and they're now receiving their check, their TTD check, how long can they expect that to continue?
Well, that typically is until the doctor decides that they can try to go back to work. And, oftentimes when they do initially get to the point where they think the person, their patient, is able to return back to work, a lot of times they'll return back to work on light duty or half days. They say, well, you can't work 8 hours a day, but we want you to go back and work 4 hours. Mm-hmm. So at that point, they'd be entitled to what we call temporary partial disability. And temporary partial disability is a little bit different. So they're getting a paycheck every week, but they're not getting the same number of hours, or they were brought back to work and the employer doesn't have light duty and they're not going to pay them the same wage that they were going to pay them. They're going to pay them less. So at that point, the individual will be entitled to what is called temporary partial disability, and that is 2/3 the difference. So each week, the workers' comp insurance company will be required to look at your paycheck, and your average weekly wage, like we talked about a minute ago, the 52 weeks. And they would owe 2/3 the difference. So that's important. A lot of times people go back to work and they say, yeah, they brought me back to work, but now I'm only working, 4 hours a day, and I was working 8 hours a day and sometimes longer, and I was working overtime, so I'm making a lot less. What am I supposed to do? So we see that quite a bit, where the insurance adjuster never really starts gathering or receiving the pay stubs showing that they've only gotten so many hours. So it's important. That's one of the reasons you get a lawyer, because we know these things.
Exactly.